I've been watching funeral coverage of John Whiting. I apologize, a little bit emotional there. As we said goodbye, the final goodbye, you saw the flag taken off the casket and given to his family, his wife, and their two small young children. Very sad day in the city of Scranton. Definitely a big loss, not just for the police force, but for the community as well. You heard those sentiments echoed throughout the funeral service by Chief Graziano and others. I'm going to bring in Eric Dable right now. Eyewitness News reporter Eric Dable has been in Scranton with me this morning. He's going to join me now as we continue our coverage.
Yeah, Tim, these services lasting for just about 2 hours here at St. Peter's Cathedral in downtown Scranton. Why don't we step out of the shot and we're able to give you live pictures of exactly what's happening. Obviously, the Mass and the services that would normally take place at a grave site happening here outside St. Peter's Cathedral this morning. You had the flag that was on John Wilding's casket handed over to the chief of the Scranton Police Department, Carl Graziano. The chief then turns and gives one flag to Officer Wilding's widow, who was holding hands, as you saw, with their two children, Sydney and Lola. Then another flag to the mother of Officer John Wilding. As we're waiting for the procession to leave St. Peter's Cathedral, I think one shot is kind of sticking out. You know, this was a 29-year-old who was a beat cop. His job was to walk and to ride the streets of Scranton, the west side of the city, and you can see right here that bike that John Wilding, draped with black and purple bunting, behind a Scranton police car. Very telling, you know, as you heard from the eulogists here this afternoon, this was a man who was a calling. This was not a job to John Wilding. This was a calling. This was something that he wanted to do. This service attended not only by members of the Scranton Police Department and the Pennsylvania State Police, several dignitaries, state dignitaries. You had U.S. Senator Bob Casey in attendance, U.S. State Attorney General Kathleen Kane, a Scranton native. You had most of the congressional delegation. You had U.S. Congressman Matt Cartwright. You also have a number of state representatives from Marty Flynn, who represents the city of Scranton, Frank Farina, who represents parts of Lackawanna County, the Lackawanna County Commissioners. And you heard just kind of what, this was no ordinary police officer, as you heard Mayor Bill Courtwright say. He was an extraordinary police officer, an extraordinary human being who had an uncommon understanding of justice. When you think, Tim, of somebody who was 29 years old, just you imagine what could have been, and obviously he gave his life protecting his community here.
And I think that was the message throughout the eulogies. Again, it was Bill Courtwright, Carl Graziano, and then Corporal Tom McDonald, again, the field training officer of John Whiting. And it's just the message that they kept on saying is that he loved his job, he loved his life, he lived everything to the fullest in his attitude. He attacked everything that he did. And that's really something that they want the officers to carry on with. Obviously, a very sad day, and this is going to be a loss. This is something you don't just bounce back from and heal, but they want them to take his attitude and his mindset going forward, Eric.
Yeah, and you heard Captain McDonald say, you know, he had some moments where in a very sad and emotional service, you did get a little bit of laughter, even from the family of John Wilding, saying, you know, he was kind of the hippest cop the city of Scranton ever had. He had the cool clothes, the hat, the tattoos, but then going back and just showing how each and every day he dedicated his life, not wanting to take time off. He was like a sponge. He just couldn't happen to get enough. And then Captain McDonald told that story about, you know, he didn't know how to call off after an 80s party where he went dressed as Karate Kid. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to, you know, day in, day out, you're working and protecting 15 months on the job here in the city of Scranton, and he wanted to be there each and every one of those days.
He did. He certainly loved his job. That was the message that was shared. He also loved his family as well. You saw them in attendance, Eric. You mentioned the one part of the service where you could just see the tip tops of his children's head peeking out above. They are young. They are 7 and 3 years of age. Again, we talk about the great loss for the community of Scranton, for the Scranton Police Force, but also thoughts and prayers going out to his family as well. They made the sacrifice. They allowed the city of Scranton, they allowed us to enjoy the time with their father, you know, with a husband. And you can't say thank you enough for that.
Yeah, and one of the things we heard was, he was a family man first. We've heard so much about how he was a dedicated officer. He loved his job. Being a Scranton police officer was his dream job. But today we heard a little bit more about the personal side of who John Wilding was. Loving his wife, loving his family, loving his children, loving his sisters and his mother and his parents. Obviously family comes first to most people, but we saw that family first, city second, community second.
And also, there at the very end, Eric, you heard that final call. It may not have been audible to some at home, but that was the final call for John Wilding. They were calling him home. They were relieving him of his duties. All is okay, Officer John Wilding. We appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely, and one of the other touching things that we're seeing as we're waiting for the procession to come down Wyoming Avenue here and the hearse to leave outside the front of St. Peter's Cathedral is the riderless horse kind of in the distance. I know it's kind of a little bit hard to see there, but that was following the hearse as it arrived here at St. Peter's Cathedral as it made its way from Lackawanna College where the viewing was held last night. The horse, the riderless horse, a symbol of an officer who has fallen, an officer who is no longer with us, someone who is no longer protecting and serving the community.
So we are here again. We just want to thank you for joining us. The funeral services for John Wilding just wrapped up just a few short minutes ago. It lasted just over 2 hours. Started at 10 a.m. this morning with the procession. Just before 10 a.m. they arrived here at St. Peter's Cathedral at 10. Service wrapped just after noon.